we need to go over some definitions and define what are classes and what are objects and what are the rules in Java for defining classes and objects. Here the picture on the left hand side, we have a class of a book and the data inside the class name and author. And in the main program here we are creating the data of the class, which we call it object. And this is how we create an object. You put the name of the class, you put a variable name which will hold the reference to the data of the object, and you write equal new and you write book with empty parameters. We will explain later what does this book do to the object. So what are classes and what are objects? Objects are created from classes. The objects you create are called instances or variables of classes. So what is a class? A class is an abstract description. When we say abstract description, it means it does not represent real data. It's like the map of the house. The map of the house does not represent a real house. It represents a sketch only of the house. So the class is an abstract description of the object. It's like a blueprint or template of the data. Here are the rules for Java. A Java program consists of one or more classes. It says each Java class definition must be in a file by itself. So you cannot put definitions for two classes in one file. The names of the file, this is one we always emphasize when we create a program in Java. It says the names of the file and the class should be the same. So if the class name is different than the file name, you will get a syntax error. So when you define your class, the file will end with .java, and this is we are familiar with when we write a program, we save it as .java. So what do we have inside the classes? Inside the classes we have data and we have methods. Just put in your mind that every class will have data and methods. So you can think of a method as defining an action to be taken on the data. So any action you make on the data inside the class is called a method. This is a conceptual picture of the class. You can look at the class as a box, and inside the box there is a data declaration, and we will have methods inside the class that will work on the data. And by the way, the word method is not strange to you. Now main, when you define public static void main, now main is a method which is defined inside the class, which is your program class. So when you define your data inside, then we say we have data declarations. And when you define your methods, we say we have methods declarations, which are the action. Now when you create the object, and see, you have a class and you have objects. When you create the objects, then the data will represent the state of the object, الحالة, okay? When you save data inside, then it represents the state. And the action will represent the behavior of the object, because how it behaves, do calculations on the data, it's called behaviors. So in red colors for the objects, when you create the object, the data represents a state and methods represents behavior. Now the places of the data and the methods inside the class is not important. You can define data between methods. You can start with a method and then you put your data. As long as you are defining the data and the method inside the class, then order doesn't matter. But you have to be organized. When you put your data and methods, be organized so other people can understand your code easily. So it's better you put the data in the beginning, followed by the methods. This is the best way to organize your data inside the class. Here is the syntax for defining a class. You write public, you write a class. So these are Java keywords, and you give a name to the class. You put curly brackets and you put the class members inside. When I say class members, it means data and methods. So the data and methods are called class members. By convention, class name starts with capital letter. So when you want to define a name for a class, start your variable name with capital letter. This is a standard, and this is why string The first letter of a string is capital letter. The first letter of a scanner is capital letter because it is defined as a class. But integer, float, double, they are all start with a small letter because they are not classes, they are primitives. So this is how you define the class. You write for the circle, you put the data, so you write the data inside. And by the way, I did not write public. Later we'll explain the difference between public and private. I define the data directly. And the method, this is an example of the method. I don't expect you to understand the syntax for this method because we need a whole lecture for defining what is a method, what are the components of the methods, how to use the methods of the object, and etc. So here, what is the method? It is getting the area of the circle. So the operation of the area, of computing the area, and the data all enclosed in one place inside the class. This is how we look into classes and objects. When you define a class, then this is like a template. It's an empty class. The data inside is called data field, and for the class we have only one data, which is radius, and we have a method which is called getArea that will give you the area of the circle. Here we are creating 3 objects from this class, so 3 variables. The first circle, it's called object1, and the radius inside is 10. The second one is called object2, and the radius is 25, and the third one is called object3, and we have the data inside which is radius 125. This is now how you define or you create your object. The syntax: you put the class name, you put the variable name, which is the reference, and equal new. So this is the command that you give to Java to create the object for you, to allocate or reserve. Allocate, it means يحجز, to allocate a place in the memory for the object. It depends on how the object looks like, which depends on the class definition. And then you just write the name of the class with empty round brackets, but later we will call this one constructor. And you remember and you know what's the meaning of constructor. Constructor, this is the, like you are the builder, that this is going to be used to initialize the object. So this is an example of creating an object from circle. So this is the name of the class, this is the name of the variable, and here new, this is like the command that we give to Java to create an object, and this is the constructor that will construct the object for us. See, we have number between the brackets. So here we don't have any number. Here we have a number. So this constructor will initialize radius inside to 2.3. So when you create the object, automatically it will have radius inside equal to 2.3. And this will be applied to any object you create from circle, because you are telling to initialize it to this number. Suppose you want to initialize it with different radius. For example, instead 2.3, you want to initialize your object with 5.0. So you write circle C2 equal new circle, between a bracket you put 5.0, and Java will create an object for you and will set the radius into 5. This is a conceptual diagram that you can use if you want to say that C1 is referring to an object. See, we are using arrow. So arrow, that means the data for C1 will take me to the object data. Another example is creating an object from a scanner, and you're already familiar with this command. And another one, if you want to create a string from a string class, we are not familiar of defining a string this way. If I want to define a string and I want to put hi inside it, we write a string str equal, and we put between double quotation hi, and it will initialize the object for us. But in fact, the compiler will change it to this. So this is another way to define string class.